Hey, everybody. This is Nevin Gusak, your host of the Populist Patriot. Just going to do a couple of live streams tonight. Before I go into the topic of this stream, I wanted to apologize to the viewership off and on today. I've been trying to upload the latest interview with J.R. Nyquist, our frequent geopolitical expert and commentator and author. And for some reason, YouTube and Skype is just chopping it up. And I'm thinking in the future that this is the only guest that I have these issues with. Um, I'm thinking of either chopping up his interviews up into 30-minute increments and seeing if that works. Otherwise, we might have to just redo the interviews. So I'm trying it again over and over today. I'll try it tomorrow. It cuts off at 30-minute mark or 58 minutes, when in reality it was an interview that was about an hour and 31 minutes. So I keep on trying. I appreciate your patience in this respect. Now getting on to the Republic of Gilead. Now, in the background over here, I'm going to move my computer because I want right beside my maternal grandfather, I have a photo of, I have a photo of Teddy Roosevelt that I recently purchased. Move my computer. Perfect. Right over here. How does everyone like that? So now I got a photograph or a portrait of my maternal grandfather and probably one of three favorite presidents of mine, Teddy Roosevelt. Got that at a vintage festival with my daughter, which was a lot of fun, and I found some nice little treasures over there. So, anyways, tonight's topic that I'm going to be talking about is the Handmaid's Tale series. It's one of the few television TV streaming series that I watch on Hulu. I also follow The Last of Us on HBO Max, sometimes Stranger Things, and the Cobra Kai series, which was based on the Karate Kid movie. So those are the handful of series that I follow with regularity. So I have some geopolitical reflections that I want to share with you about The Handmaid's Tale. Now, many people think that The Handmaid's Tale is basically some sort of takeover by right-wing conservatives, evangelicals, the most socially conservative elements of the Republican Party and the conservative movement. But when you really look at the ideology, what is available, what is known or revealed in the dialogue between the different characters throughout the series, you will actually find that the ruling group, or the equivalent of the ruling party or movement, known as the Sons of Jacob, in The Handmaid's Tale, is actually a very ideologically eclectic mix when it comes to public policy and ideology. I would argue it's a hybrid of this form of, if you want to use the term loosely, socialism or fascism or national socialism, in the sense that it's very clear that industries, in fact, the entire economy is owned by the state. It's very clear. You don't see commercial brands, you don't see advertising of previously existing American companies. You'll also see, I think it's either a season 1 or season 2, one of the top commanders, Andrew Price. Commanders are the high-ranking officials in the Republic of Gilead, which took over in a coup against the United States government. And the United States in the series still exists. It exists in 2 states, really, Alaska and Hawaii. And what one of the original founding commanders, top officials in the Republic of Gilead, Andrew Price, in dialogue with a new recruit, Nick Blaine, who became one of the coup plotters, as well as an eye. The Eyes of God was his name of the secret police and intelligence service in the Republic of Gilead, and then he became a commander. Commander Price said to Nick Blaine was very interesting. Is like, no wonder God has turned his back on the country, on the United States. Said all the United States society focuses on is profit and pleasure. Now, you don't hear really any segment of the Republican Party ever talking in using such ideological terms, because pleasure, materialism, and certainly profit are virtues, particularly profit is a virtue in all factions of the Republican Party and the conservative movement, especially the ones that claim they're Christian. I mean, you don't hear Ron DeSantis saying that the United States is going into the crapper because of profit and pleasure. No. Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump, the quote unquote religious right, most of them love the profit economy. They meld together extreme economic libertarianism, even economic globalism, with that of social conservatism. I know I used to be active in the Republican Party once upon a time. One of this quote unquote what the show says, or who says is the show has another character by the name of Commander Joseph Lawrence, and he is touted as by both Aunt Lydia. If you know the series well, you can look up who these characters are. Aunt Lydia, and also Luke Bankole. He is touted as the architect of Gilead's economy. And the interesting thing is that with Commander Joseph Lawrence, thank you for those of you who are listening, thank you for the likes, and thank you for listening. Commander Lawrence said in the last season of The Handmaid's Tale, he said that when he was trying to recruit June, the main character, or one of the main characters in the film, he visits June in Canada. Now, the commanders are allowed to travel abroad as long as they're granted visas by countries like Canada. And Commander Lawrence said, look, to June, give up on this whole idea of democracy and the constitutional republic. It's just creation, as he says, of a bunch of slave owners, hypocritical slave owners. And now the experiment in the United States was an experiment in late stage capitalism and rampant consumerism, which caused the world to nearly collapse. Now, again, is that the verbiage? Is that the language that Ron DeSantis and these good Christian conservatives here in the United States say? Absolutely not. The Republic of Gilead and the Sons of Jacob is something very new and unique. Granted, it's a fictional story. I suspect that you have the melding of left populist or even socialist doctrines combined with extremely socially conservative views beyond even what the most hardcore evangelicals would ever advocate in the United States of America. At least the leadership, as well as people like the Ron DeSantis's, the Ron Johnsons, the Mitch McConnells, the Thad Cochrans, even the most religious of conservatives. These are people that are basically the equivalent of a Christian version of the Taliban or the Christian version of the Islamic Republic of Iran. In fact, there are many parallels between the Republic of Gilead and the Islamic Republic of Iran. In the Islamic Republic of Iran, you have a very, very huge nationalized state owned sector, partially inherited from the Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. And you also had the private sector that existed under the Shah that became even more strictly controlled by the government in the Islamic Republic of Khomeini and his successors, as well as also more enterprises that were nationalized by the Islamic Republic in 1979. So I think there are more parallels with that. Now, when you look at some forums like on Reddit, discussed dedicated to the Handmaid's Tale, you'll have people that'll say, well, social services were privatized, at least in the last days of the United States. Well, I would argue that if there was any privatization in the last years of the United States or the early years of the Republic of Gilead, that these were nonprofits associated with the sons of Jacob that were actually served as quasi public sector or quasi government entities, very similar to the Bonyads in the Islamic Republic of Iran. These were ostensibly private foundations that were controlled by the religious elite. They served as private foundations, similar to in Nazi Germany and National Socialist Germany. You had a number of, quote, party agencies or party nonprofits like the Labor Front or the SS that controlled public sector enterprises. Were these, quote, government? Well, not technically, but functionally they were public enterprises or state owned or state sector or quasi state owned enterprises. Now, the other thing that was very interesting, that where the Republic of Gilead was rather different and distinct from your typical right-wing Tea Party Christian conservative ideology, is the allies of the Republic of Gilead. Now, the Republic of Gilead definitely sought to increase its diplomatic standing throughout the world, both with democracies slash republics as well as dictatorships. We know from Commander Lawrence and the other commanders that they had disdain for global democracy. We know that from the last season. We also know that when the U.S. Air Force, based in Canada along the border with Gilead, they launched a raid to try and extract teens or tweens from special wives training schools I believe, in what used to be called the state of Colorado. That failed. And in dialogue between Commander Lawrence, Commander Calhoun, and other commanders, they were talking about how they strengthened their alliances. And who are these allies? North Korea, Russia under Putin, and Communist China. In fact, the ambassadors, it sounds like that Gilead established diplomatic relations with North Korea and continued diplomatic relations with the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China. So the ambassadors from those three governments congratulated the Republic of Gilead for, quote, sticking it to the Americans. Now, there were some tanky Marxist-Leninists who commented on Reddit forums that was kind of, well, that was a low blow. Why did the producers and the writers for The Handmaid's Tale, take pot shots at North Korea, Russia, and China? Well, it's not unusual in current affairs as well as in prior history. I mean, the Saudis, since the Saudi Arabia, which is an Islamic fundamentalist dictatorship, has maintained ties with the People's Republic of China since at least the mid to late 1980s, and as far as imports of Chinese-made weapon systems. The Iranians have maintained ties with the Soviet Union, China, and other communist countries, both past and present. So here you have a religious fundamentalist dictatorship meeting and having interests converging with atheistic communist dictatorships. And I can go on and on and on of these seeming contradictions. I mean, for that matter, you have capitalist countries like the United States with capitalist economies trading with its sworn enemies. So politics indeed, and economics and trade and commerce and greed does indeed make strange bedfellows. But the Republic of Gilead, there was on Instagram and I believe Reddit, there was a wall of newspaper clippings which were show props. They weren't shown on the show, but they were part of, I guess, the show, if you will, the Handmaid's Tale, official Handmaid's Tale, newspaper clippings, not the one that June was looking over. It was not published in the show, but part of the show lore, I guess. And there was one newspaper clipping with the headline which said that Gilead's trade with Asia was on the rise. Gilead attempted to do bilateral trade with Mexico. We don't know if that was successful or not. Commander Lawrence talks about when the Waterfords were captured by the Americans, backed by the Canadian military. The Waterfords were one of the original founders. Commander Waterford and his wife, Serena Joy, were some of the founding commanders of the Sons of Jacob of the Republic of Gilead. When they were captured in Canada, there were commanders like Commander Calhoun who wanted to put troops at the border and even launch retaliatory strikes against Canada, or even just close the border between Gilead and Canada its entirety. And Commander Lawrence said, "Are you kidding me? That's going to kill us because we're basically trading with Canada." So, and we know that trade with Canada, goods between Gilead and Canada were transported on jet engine cargo aircraft that left major international airports, including Boston, the one located in Boston in the New England district. You see, the states were, in the United States were merged into regional units known as districts in the Republic of Gilead. So we know that Gilead had some trade with the rest of the world. And we know that greedy business people or geopolitical interests or both, they're going to trade with, anybody that's willing to barter them goods or provide hard currency on the world market or a little bit of both. So we know that's happening. We know that there is technically a UN embargo, but obviously there is embargo or sanctions busting. We know that. We know that in particular, despite Canada's trade with Gilead, there still are sanctions that are levied by Canada. There are sanctions that have been imposed by Great Britain and presumably by other countries. We know the United States government, which exists, it's based in Alaska. The new capital of the United States is in Anchorage, Alaska. And the United States, for all intents and purposes, consists of Alaska and Hawaii. And we know from a Radio Free America broadcast that that India and China did provide aid to the United States. And it could be that China is playing both sides of the fence. They want to keep a door open to both Gilead as well as the United States. Governments play the fence in international conflicts all the time. But China does have ideologically, I would argue, more in common with Gilead. You have a state controlled economy, you have this sort of quasi socialistic attitude towards capitalism, you have an absolute disdain towards liberal democracy, you have an absolute disdain towards the United States government or what's left of it. You also have a commitment to a centralized dictatorship. So, and really a government in Gilead that is motivated by a collectivistic spirit. Um, you know, and Lydia in the series, as well as in the movie that came out in 1990, The Handmaid's Tale, Aunt Lydia had mentioned to the handmaids in training that there are two kinds of freedom: freedom from and freedom to. And right now you're from, and don't underrate it. And it's a very collectivistic ideology. You have the view that it's not your baby, as Aunt Lydia said to one of the handmaids, I believe it was Janine. It's our baby, it's society's baby, it's for the greater good. So I know I did a video last year about The Handmaid's Tale where I talked about different themes, but as each season passes with The Handmaid's Tale, more and more you really can't call the Republic of Gilead a government of the right, and it really isn't the left, because the left tends to be, with exceptions of course, the left tends to be associated with secularism and socially progressive ideas. Not always. I mean, in communist countries, they tend to have a more socially conservative approach, despite opportunistic gyrations to the contrary, only to get foreign money and to make them look good to the outside world. So that pretty much concludes this stream. The next stream I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to be talking about the derailment of Norfolk Suffolk trains in East Palestine, Ohio. So that's going to be my other stream. I'll be getting back on in a few moments. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for the likes. See you in a few.